Welcome to Power Talks. In today's episode, we are discussing about the role of international partners and foreign aid in the development projects of Nepal since 1950s. 5 decades ago, the situation that was in Israel with finances, poverty, barren deserts, not much hope in terms of a great livelihood. I think we sense that in Nepal right now. But Israel has come a long way. It's one of the developed countries of the world. The economy is great. There are green pastures everywhere. So considering the growth that we are seeing in Nepal right now, do you see hope for us?
I think Nepal has a great potential. I went to a trek in Dolaka, and when you see the hard-working farmers, no one can tell me stories that Nepalis are lazy. They are willing to work hard. And when you see the courage of the people going to the streets in April 2006, risking their life to bring a change in Nepal, and they're all young people, most of them young people, you cannot say that Nepali are indifferent and they don't care about anything. There's a lot of energy here. The issue is how to channel it in the right directions. And Nepal has a lot of potential, whether it's hydroelectric projects, tourism. You have a paradise here. I hope you all realize it. For tourists, it's really a paradise. You have heritage, you have culture, you have various ethnic groups that are fascinating. You have scenery, one of the most beautiful in the world. You all have it all. And the hospitality, famous Nepali hospitality. So I think that a lot can be done here once you have political stability, once the bans become part of the past, then I think Nepal will go on the right track, and hopefully by drafting a constitution that will enable a smooth transfer of powers between the political parties through democratic elections.
You're counted amongst world's eminent diplomats. Based on your experience and expertise in dealing with other nations in transition, where do you place Nepal's future? Realistically, how optimistic or patient should we be?
That is a hard question, of course. I have been in 2 other countries where there was transition. My previous post as ambassador in Kenya, and then I was in Bangladesh, where in a way you still have a transition. I think all countries have their own unique transition. And if I look at my own country's history, we have had different transitions. Transition takes time. I don't want to be pessimistic, because you will come through it, of course. Nepal has existed for so many years. So you will come through it. It's merely how long it does take, and can you get through it in a peaceful way. You have had an insurgency for more than 10 years. Many thousand lives have been lost. So the issue here is that all parties, political parties, but also all partners, because it's more than the political parties, it's every Nepali plays a crucial role to make peace and move forward. And the key word is inclusiveness.
We are very grateful for the donations we have received from worldwide in terms of our development. At the same time, don't you feel that the aid also creates a dependency of any nation's growth, and it inhibits any nation from taking its own creative approaches?
The figures of development assistance to Nepal is around $600 million. I think this is the figure we are talking about. Compared to the GDP of $11 billion, it's not a huge figure. Compared to that is 20% of the budget, then it's big. And when we compare to that, it's 70% of the development budget, then it's very big, and for sure you are dependent. We don't want to make you dependent, let me say that. We are only giving a neighbor a helping hand. In fact, we want the government of Nepal to be in the driving seat when it comes to development. We want to support your ideas. We give a helping hand in forms of money and technical assistance.
We're still in a very historic time of conflict. People are trying to find out ways how the country can move forward. How do you envision the future of Nepal?
It's certainly a mixed situation going on. I think it's a rather idealistic outlook, But I've asked myself this question many times about, okay, if I was having to be in the driver's seat, what would be some of the programs I would initiate? Or how can I give a positive reinforcement to youth that want to go overseas? You know, it's an intelligentsia drain on the country, and I'm very sad every time a great photographer friend of mine or a great journalist or a technician says bye and gives up on this country. So how do I say, come on, you have to stay behind. Don't you love your own country? I love it dearly. I care about this country. I think it would be a wonderful program to have Nepalese youth to go out and do volunteer work in wherever it might be. It can be in the city, it can be in the hills, for a certain amount of period. And there should be some strings attached to that, whether it's monetary or at least certainly recognized to be able to take the next step forward.
Nepal has failed in its economy due to the decade-long conflict and civil war. But we're still rich in natural resources, and our prospects for agriculture and tourism is very high. Based on the successful model of your country, how do you suggest us that we can best utilize our resources and develop the agricultural and tourism sector?
You are already a very popular destination for German tourists, not only trekkers, but they're also people who are interested in the sort of the cultural sites you have to offer. You have the Nepal tourism year coming up in 2011. I think to achieve further growth in the field of tourism, first of all, the peace process should continue and not being hampered by the current political crisis. But I think also the infrastructure has to be improved, which doesn't mean that you need any five-star hotels up in the mountains, but a certain infrastructure has to be put in place. And you mentioned also the other sector where you have huge potential, which is called water, hydropower. I think you only have tapped so far a very small percentage of what could be done in this field, and I think there are German investors who would be interested to come, but it means that some improvements are necessary also concerning the investment climate.
Over last decade, news of several farmers committing suicide in India was widespread as a result of low produce and their inability to pay back the bank loans. Last year, the Indian government exempted soft loans to the farmer, which relieved them. And that probably was a good strategy in their context. This year, Nepal has opted a similar strategy. But in Nepalese context, will this be beneficial for both the farmers and the banks?
Well, I think this is not a very good idea to do this for two main reasons. The first is it doesn't benefit the poorest farmers because they do not have access to the formal financial system. They depend on moneylenders, and the government's policy of providing debt relief will not reach them. The second reason is that it is unfair to those farmers who actually pay their debts, who service their loans. It is also not beneficial for the banks because even now they may be compensated by the government for the loans that are being forgiven. But in future it discourages every farmer who borrows from the banks to repay the loans because they can wait for a new government relief scheme. And that will cause loan losses for the banks. Because of that, it will ultimately also not benefit farmers because banks will be more reluctant to lend into the agricultural sector because the risk has increased. I think a case can be made for loan forgiveness in the event of natural catastrophes such as the floods in eastern Nepal recently. Those people are clearly not in a position to repay their loans, and some sort of relief should be provided. But as a general policy, I think it is not compatible with sustained growth of the agricultural sector.
But when we look at only 25 million population and Nepal having rich prospects in tourism, agriculture and hydropower, it's not very difficult for Nepal to revive its economy and progress in this sector. What are the prerequisites that Nepal need to achieve it?
There are several things that need to go right before Nepal can realize its economic potential. First of all is a normalization of politics. By this I mean that political conflicts are fought out in parliament and not on the streets. Roadblocks and industrial disputes, which are to a large extent driven by politics, have taken a huge toll on the economy. So bans, strikes, road blockages should stop. Labor disputes that are driven by politics and not by genuine questions about workers' issues should stop. At the same time, politicians need to pull together at least on a few issues. Getting roads built, getting power plants built should not be held hostage to political competition. A next point is that the state needs to set and enforce the rules of the economic game. For example, cartelization in many areas of the economy is widespread, for example, transportation and retail trade. This implies that people pay too much for inferior goods and services. The state must make sure that competition prevails and cartels cannot be established. A third point is that the government bureaucracy must become more efficient and governance must improve. Every year the budget plans significant investments, and every year the budget is not executed fully. This year, large amounts of resources have been provided to the state by the outstanding performance of the revenue services, but these resources are not being used. So the bureaucracy must be made to work better and more efficiently. There are many reasons for the current weaknesses. One is, for example, the frequent rotation of staff. Another is the pervasive political interference. And the third, of course, is corruption. A fourth point that I would like to mention, and which is related, is public investment. The Nepalese economy needs to have more public investment in basic infrastructure. We all experience daily the power shortages. For private persons, this is an inconvenience, but for industries, this is life-threatening. We cannot wait, the Nepalese economy cannot wait for 10 years until a new hydroelectric power plant may be built. We need some quick fixes. Another area is transportation. There are too few roads, both national highways and feeder roads. Travel times are too long. This forecloses economic opportunities and leaves people poor. One of the best ways to combat poverty is connecting people and markets, and this is done through roads.
You worked in Switzerland and now you're in Nepal, both the countries with beautiful landscapes and great tourist destinations. What is SAARC doing to uplift the regional tourism in the SAARC regions?
SAARC has tourism on its agenda, and the mechanisms which they have put in place, they are addressing the problems in its various dimensions. Actually, a meeting took place just last month in Colombo on SAARC tourism, and they came out with a number of action points. Like 2010 will be declared as the year of SAARC tourism. The visa regulations and people-to-people transits, for them also questions are there to address. And there is a process already at hand which can do these problems, which can solve these problems. And lastly, the most important aspect of tourism is connectivity. So SAARC is looking at connectivity in land, sea, air connectivity. So we hope that in the coming months and years, we will do very definitive steps in the field of transport and connectivity, which is the mainstay of tourism.
South Asia, unfortunately, is also the home for world's largest poor population. What are the initiatives taken by SAARC to uplift the economic standards of common people and work on poverty reduction as well?
Poverty alleviation is the overarching goal of SAARC, and it is now 15 summits that have consistently endorsed that goal. But for 1.5 billion people, when you talk about lifting them out of poverty, naturally the doers will have to be member states, their governments, and even their own governments. As you follow the newspapers, they also deal with a whole range of actors in each country. So poverty alleviation and dealing with the problem of the masses, actually that is the core, that's the be all and the end all of SAARC. If SAARC cannot do something for them through the combined efforts of all our governments and member states and people, then we will not be coming true to the expectations from us, from our people.
During America's new administration with Obama's leadership, what will be the major focus for Nepal and also the focus on South Asia?
I don't expect many changes on Nepal. I think our policy is one that has been bipartisan. It's had support from both Republicans and Democrats. The focus is on trying to support the peaceful transition to a more democratic, stable, prosperous, and inclusive Nepal. There's been bipartisan support for our assistance programs, for our education programs here in Nepal, and I think those will change. In South Asia, there's a clear focus on looking at the Afghanistan conflict, how you bring in Pakistan as part of the solution to that. I expect a continuation of the very strong efforts to improve our relations with India, continue to expand those, also to work with the region on terrorism and regional cooperation.
During the 8-month Maoist government, U.S. still continued to support the development aid and provided visas to students and workers who wanted to go to America. How do we take that gesture? Is it like acceptance of Maoist leadership?
There was no question on the U.S. acceptance of the Maoist leadership. The Nepali people had spoken in what was a free and fair election judged by the international community, more importantly by the Nepalis. And so we certainly accepted that result. Many of our programs, almost all of our programs, are directly to the people of Nepal rather than to the government of Nepal. And so those programs we had hoped, while they have the approval of the government, whichever one is in power in the day, they are more directly targeted at the population. And we were very pleased that they were allowed by the Maoist government to continue. We think that they have contributed not only to the peace process and democracy, but particularly in the health field. We were very pleased to see those go forward. Visas are a function of people wanting to go to the United States, and the numbers have stayed very high. We continue to offer those services and are pleased that Nepalis want to go to the United States.
We are grateful for the scholarships that the U.S. government provides to innovative, creative, hardworking Nepalese students through Fulbright and East-West scholarships and other scholarships that comes directly from the U.S. colleges. However, does not this generous offer also contributes to Nepal's major issue of rin-rin?
I think particularly for the U.S. government-sponsored programs, which are the Fulbright programs, the Humphrey programs, the East-West Center, all of those require the students, once they have completed their training in the United States, to come back to Nepal for a minimum of 2 years. We've had I've had a lot of interaction with the alumni of those programs, and they have formed an organization here in Nepal for each of the scholarships, and then an umbrella organization. And I find them to be among the most creative and people in Nepal. They are doing a variety of things in academic institutions, in business, in government. So we are very, very pleased with that. I think it's an example of the payback. They have remained very active in whatever the field of study, but also they've brought back attitudes that give them an idea of public service, and we're very, very proud of that. The scholarships from the universities themselves do not carry that same requirement to come back, but I think as Nepal opens up, as it continues its democratic transition, certainly those people come back in greater numbers than perhaps they did at one time. I also think now with the internet and particularly the connections that they can and do make a real contribution. I know there is a very active Nepali network in the United States that is constantly commenting on Nepali politics and constitutional development, and I had a Nepali American professor in my office last week who was presenting an idea on how to do federalism in Nepal. So I think that constant interaction, even if people are not physically present in Nepal, perhaps their hearts and their brains are still here and looking for ways that they can contribute. And the remittances from the United States, as from so many other countries where Nepalis work, are an important underpinning of the economy right now until Nepal can get its own economy up and running and provide the jobs. So I think those are all important factors that offset the loss of some of the brightest and the best that go to the United States and other countries.
Prosperity will directly contribute to a democratic, peaceful, and progressive Nepal. Is there any chance that there will be U.S. investments in the business sector in the future? Well,
we continue to hope so. I've met with the entrepreneurs that we have here. Some of them are big names of internationally known firms that continue to work in Nepal. Others are very, very small, but they are providing employment and ideas for Nepalis, and so we're proud of the entire range of them. I think as I've met with them, and we met particularly with those who would be considered foreign investors, they document a lot of issues and concerns that they have. There are concerns over particularly labor issues, and Nepal's labor laws are very difficult for particularly Americans to administer. They're very different than our labor laws. The overtones of strikes and bunds that have interfered with their ability to work make it hard to make an advertisement for Nepal to come and invest. I think particularly the load shedding, anytime that you have to add to your costs with the generator for 18 hours a day to run your factory, when you can look at other places that have full-time electricity, a businessman does not necessarily go with his heart. He's looking at the bottom line, and that fact alone makes it very, very difficult for Nepal to compete with other places. So dealing with the power issues, dealing with the labor issues, I think making sure that the procurement process is transparent. We have an American company engaged in a major government procurement right now and want to ensure that they have a fair chance, that it's an even-handed procurement process. And those are challenges in Nepal that Nepal needs to continue to work on. I think there are many people who, particularly American investors, who have come to the subcontinent, India, perhaps to Pakistan or to Bangladesh. And if they're already in the subcontinent, they're used to dealing with some of these issues, and they're more willing to take a look at Nepal. But Nepal is going to have to work at having a better story to attract these people and to meet their bottom line, that they can make a profit here.
Nepal is still undergoing through a political turmoil, besides putting aside the 10-year-long conflict through the peace process.
Yes.
But we have seen that countries like Sri Lanka, where despite having conflict, they have done pretty well with foreign investments.
Yeah.
How can Nepal invite and safeguard FDI, foreign direct investments?
The government has to give very clear signals, not only by words, by demonstrating that there is a stability in this country. There is no danger in this country. If that happens, I think investment should not be a problem. I know there are people who are ready to invest in this beautiful country, in many sectors. But government has to be progressive. Government has to make sure that whoever is investing, even domestic investments are not also happening to the desired extent. I am not saying nothing is happening. Definitely something is happening, but not to the desired extent. So we need to see there is a catalysis. Some catalytic agent is working in a very positive way, and government could be that catalytic agent. Government should allow private sector to invest. Government should invite foreign direct investment into this country by resolving certain ticklish issues, like for a power sector, as for example. There are a lot of social issues which an investor will not be able to resolve. It is for the government to resolve those issues in a very comprehensive manner, so that the investment can come, income is generated, additional employment opportunities are generated, royalty could be agreed upon, all those issues. If 2 or 3 projects can happen in a seamless manner, I think there will be no dearth of investments. But government needs to prove that yes, it is solidly behind the investments, it really wants economic development. That has to be demonstrated. Once that is demonstrated, I don't think there is any problem of foreign direct investment here or domestic investment here. Because we all know that capital flights are happening, even it is not unknown to the government. Those capital flights will be stopped. That's my feeling.
Nepal and the US recently signed the TIFA agreement, Trade and Investment Framework Agreement. What can Nepal expect from this?
What I hope we'll see coming from this is a real surge in the economic partnerships, the commercial partnerships between our two countries. It's not going to happen overnight. But the TIFA itself provides, as it says, it's a framework agreement. It provides that the basis for us to engage with each other, a mechanism for us to resolve issues of concern, to talk about how we build both a trade and investment relationship. And I think that this is critically important to the future of Nepal. We've got to build that economy. We've got to create opportunities for the youth. We have to build for the future, and I'd like to see us do that, and I believe the time is right. I think that many people, when they look at Nepal, still think of it as they did 10 years ago. They still think of the country in insurgency and the Maoists with kukris in their teeth and blood being spilled. That's not the Nepal of today. The narrative has changed. There are challenges ahead, yes, but there is potential for growth. There are American companies who are very quietly doing business here already and who are doing well, who are making money. There are other people, Nepali companies, that are doing well, that are making money. There are opportunities for growth. You are positioned between two of the largest economies in the world, fastest growing economies in the world. India and China. I've recently traveled to New Delhi and I talked to American businesses with the American Chamber of Commerce. And I'm very pleased because later this month, we've got a good trade delegation coming up from the American Chamber in New Delhi. And I want them to see Nepal with their own eyes. I would want them to not listen to what the media has to say, with all due respect. I want them to see it for themselves. I think that this is a formula for seeing Nepal also do well and to consolidate the democratic gains that you are going to make by having a prosperous economy that is the framework, or that provides the undergrid for all of this.
Switzerland has contributed to the development and growth of Nepal over the last 50 years. How do you see the outcome of your 50 years long investments in this country?
When I arrived here and was privileged to open an embassy in 2009 after 50 years of friendship, I think I had the easiest job any ambassador could have, is to open an embassy in a country where the links of friendship at the intergovernmental level, at the level of individuals, of foundations, is as strong as it is. For example, if I take the trail bridge sector, I mean, we've been in that sector for quite some time now, but over the last 10 years, we've built about 1,500 bridges and helped to repair about 3,500. Of course, when I say we, I don't mean we Switzerland. I mean we together with our partners in the government and the Ministry of Local Development and Dolidar, which is the entity that is in charge of that. Now, you've seen these pictures of the people hanging, the children, the school children.
Which is very risky.
Yes, that's hanging from ropes every morning to go across rivers. I think the argument doesn't have to be made. I mean, over the last 10 years, for about 4.5 million people, we've reduced the access by 2.5 hours of them getting across those rivers and getting across in a safe way.
Thank you for being with us. We'll be back next week at the same time with another special episode. Till then, good luck and goodbye.